vulnerable Nova Scotians perceive this government is significantly important. And I would say to the minister that he should show some compassion, show some leadership, demonstrate his concern for this very important issue, and get on the phone tonight or tomorrow as quickly as possible and get them back to the table. Because, Mr. Speaker, whether you like this or not, this is a budget item. And when we debate the Financial Measures Act here, Mr. Speaker, we debate every single item within the budget, and then some. And as this affects the Minister of Community Services budget, Mr. Speaker, I would ask him to certainly talk to the Finance Minister, the Minister of Labour and Environment, and certainly make a phone call to the board of the volunteer board who worked so hard and so diligently on behalf of the RSS.
Order. The hour of interruption, time of interruption has occurred. We are now going to move to late debate. And the resolution is from the member from Cape Breton South. Therefore, be it resolved, rural roads are in deplorable condition. And I recognize the member from Cape Breton Nova. You have 10 minutes with regard to the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's always a privilege and an honor to rise in this House, especially after such outstanding oratory as we've just heard. Now, I'd like to speak on the same subject as well, but the draw has been conducted by the clerk, and the subject to debate for the next half hour is, therefore, be it resolved that rural roads are in deplorable condition. So I'll have to address that subject during these 10 minutes and not the Financial Measures Act. I'll speak on that one later on, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, in approaching the upcoming election, I can tell you that there's nothing more important than rural roads, because that's what we will depend on to get to the people. And the people that will be voting in the 52 ridings are mostly in rural constituencies. They're not downtown. They're not in air-conditioned office towers. They're out there in the places that are not so far and that are much further away from downtown Halifax. The hinterlands, I'm told. The hinterlands, yes. And the people that live in those areas, they judge government and politicians and the whole political process by what they see and experience day to day in living. They don't come to downtown Halifax. They don't go into the air-conditioned office towers to go to the 17th floor and confer with people in suits and ties. That's not the way they live. They have their own work, their own occupations, their own activities to keep them busy all day long and then some. How do they get from place to place? The answer is by the road system that we have. It's not by railways. They've largely gone out of style. It's not by airlines. They're beyond the ordinary person's ability to pay for. It's not even by cruise ships or by ocean liners or by any other kind of vessel that plies the waters. They use the roads. This is the result of the automobile revolution of the 20th century, which was, of course, made possible by assembly line production, mass development of a cheap car that ordinary people could afford. Because when that became available to the people and they could buy the Model T or whatever it was that they drove, that led to the development of roads so that these cars could proceed down them. And because we now have a highway network that goes into every nook and cranny, it means that the public are dependent on the roads more so than ever. That is likely to continue into the future. I know there's talk of developing new fuels and talk of developing an electric car and talk of developing some kind of a steam engine maybe that might use nuclear fusion, not fission, but fusion to get by. But they're all on four wheels. They all go down the roads. So whether we're driving a gasoline-propelled car or a propane-fired car or an ethanol-fired car or a steam engine or whatever it may be, we're going to be dependent on these roads for a long time to come. Now, Mr. Speaker, I was formerly transport critic for the Liberal Party, and I notice my honourable friends to the front nodding at that. So they realize that that is indeed so. During that time, I perhaps gained more appreciation of these matters than I had in the past, because you have to reflect on what you're supposed to be doing. Yes, Caneville Road is paved from top to bottom. The honourable member is right, and pardon me? Oh, past the Pontiacs, around Newman's Corner, and right up to the Poiriers at the end. And that little loop there where you can turn around and come back out. All that is an example of what should be done and what was done in my constituency. I won't say thanks to me, because I didn't go out like the honourable member over there and pave the roads by driving the paving machine myself, but I was instrumental, Mr. Chairman, instrumental in helping make that work happen. So, we're talking here about rural roads being in deplorable condition, not those rural roads that are all fixed up. So I won't dwell too long on the one that he mentions that was fixed up. Well, if I had more time, Mr. Chairman, but he wants me to take up my whole 10 minutes talking about Mrs. Mathis rather than about rural roads being in deplorable condition. And that's what's on the topic for the debate here. Yeah? Well, I was Mrs. Mathis. Her name was Helen Tootsie Mathis, and she lived at 44 Queen Street in Scotia. And because she came out her door with her broom one day waving it at me, that led to her road getting paved that summer instead of the following year, which it was scheduled to be done. Yes, sometimes a broom in a good place is a good thing. But the idea was, if you don't get our road on the list of roads to be paved this summer, don't come around here looking for any more votes. So the road was paved. There was no further argument at that point. Now, if that's enough, the reason that could be relevant to this resolution is that the condition of Queen Street before it was paved was absolutely terrible. And this road says deplorable, so I'll say the road was deplorable. It was muddy in the spring. It was very dust filled in the summer. In the autumn, when the frost came in, it was all heaving, and generally year-round it was in deplorable condition, which I think is what this resolution says. So that's the way it was. Now, I know that it's the job of governments to pave roads. I think it was Angus MacLean, the former Premier of Prince Edward Island, who said that if it moves, get it a pension. If it doesn't move, pave it. That was the formula of Premier of Prince Edward Island, Angus MacLean, for remaining in office. And I think he remained in office for some time, and he was a Tory. But I'll follow a Tory on certain items where I think they may be right. And certainly when it comes to paving roads, that is very important. In the province of Prince Edward Island, I should say, they've got almost every road over there paved by now. Almost every one. There are a few little rural roads that aren't yet. But the main highway system of the province is completely paved. Now, I know that the Minister of Transport may say, well, the land over there is flatter than it is in Nova Scotia. And that's true. Also Manitoba. Manitoba's very flat. That's why a flat party like the NDP can get into power there. Yes. But in Nova Scotia, highway construction is more difficult than in Manitoba or in Prince Edward Island, and that's why it requires more effort, more energy, and more attention. Now, we get all kinds of reports that the bridges of the Nova Scotia highway system are in a poor state of repair. I remember years ago that there were an awful lot of one-lane bridges on the main highways, and cars would line up in one way, waiting, while those coming the other way proceeded across the bridge. Well, there is still one like that at St. Peter's over the canal. There is still one like that at Blackbrook, which is in the constituency of Cape Breton West between Donkin and Myragot. There are one-lane bridges at Leach's Creek. Margaree. I hear there's a terrible bridge at Margaree. The Tories are hoping they'll have that new bridge there completely ready for use before Election Day, but they'll require magical powers to make that happen in the next 6 weeks, I think. Magical powers. Anyway, the tenders on that have been awarded and the construction is underway. And Mr. Chair, if you want to follow the history of the Tory party on these matters, look at the bridge from Grand Narrows to Iona, the Barra Strait Bridge in Cape Breton. The Tory party under John Buchanan was able to use that bridge in 4 consecutive elections to help them get back into power. The first election was that the bridge was going to be built. The second election was the tenders had now been awarded. The third election was, and the bridge is now being built. See it. And the final election was, and the bridge has been built. Drive over it. See? So that's the way in which you can use a bridge to win elections. Now it seems that the Tories have lost sight of the old vision. Some of them have even gone to sleep, Mr. Chairman. But the fact is that I think the more alert and awake elements over there may perhaps rise to the challenge in the next 5 or 6 weeks and demonstrate new interest in this subject. But it's not interest that we're looking for, Mr. Chairman, it's action. Action is what the people want. Action is what the people need. Action is what the people deserve. I think my 10 minutes are just about up. If there's another speaker wanting to speak about bridges and roads, I would welcome their coming into the debate.
I thank the member from Cape Breton Nova. I recognize the member from Chester, St. Margaret's.
Mr. Speaker, I very much appreciate this opportunity, and it's sort of very interesting because to get to follow one of the maybe the most colorful speaker in this House, it's a very great privilege. I'm not certainly saying I don't always agree with everything that he says, but he always very articulately makes his point of view come across, and certainly it's a very great privilege to hear him talk. Of course, the topic tonight is rural roads are in deplorable conditions. And I think many people feel indeed that is the truth, and exactly it is. I think it's a very good topic, though, at this time of the year, because indeed it is the spring. And the spring is a very good time when you really become very much aware of the condition of the road that is in the district that you have the honor of representing. Of course, I know many people on the side of this House are representing rural or suburban ridings as well, and some are urban as well. But certainly, I'm sure no member that has the honor of being in the representing part of Nova Scotia certainly have no opinions about what we can do to improve the road situation, because indeed we have to. And I think as time rolls forth, you also realize that railways are sort of fading and roads are absolutely terribly more and more important. Because I think we all realize that in the economy of Nova Scotia, the economy of any place of Canada, is basically the economy. We have to get to market what we can do and what we can make. And so in that respect, the world is not exploding, the world's imploding. Because there are indeed companies in Nova Scotia that are literally selling on the other side of the world. And I have the great honor, I represent the area of Chester St. Margaret's, and I've always been terribly impressed with GN Plastics. If you didn't know what GN Plastics was, that company just won a volunteer, the company was given an award this year at the volunteer ceremony, and the reason for healthy futures, and this is what encouraging people to in the community, etc. But they literally sell in 50 countries around the world. So, at any rate, it's very, very important that we have the roads that are adequate to get their product to market and things like that, because there are no real railways and things like this. And I think it's very important, too, why people on this side of the House feel that we should be discussing this. It's because we do. I'm sure nobody on this side of the road said, all the roads are just fine. We're just so tickled pink with them all. No, we're not on that side. But we really are making some accomplishments in that area. And because we can go on, and I won't get into it tonight, but basically we are living within our means. And so the other thing is, I think I'm very much impressed by the Minister of Transportation and Public Works, and the one before him as well, is when, in this case, he says, we will do this. We not only, they say they'll do it, and they end up doing it. And it's very, very important that you can't just, I know one of the greatest shocks when I had the honor of being the MLA for Chester St. Margaret's, a person phoned me up, how about paving this road? It's in my writing. He says, oh, well, he says, yes, the government before us, they said they would have it. I got a letter in my file. I had the letter saying that it will be paved by the spring. That was 4 springs ago. We certainly can't put that sort of down on paper. Now, when we do say we'll do something, we do indeed do it. And it's very, very important. Of course, bureaucratic engineers, et cetera, in the Department of Transportation said, okay, just in real, what do you have to, what sort of things would, in a world that had no money problems, what would you need to fix up all the roads and make them A1? That's not building so much new roads, but just repairing what we have. And the guesstimate was about $3.5 billion over a 10-year period. So when we became the government in 1999, we are paying, I think, in the neighborhood of about $40 to $50 million on new roads. That is repairing the roads. This year, in the budget, it was $106 million. It's not perfect, but we're going in the right direction. And I think that's why many people feel that we're getting ahead in this regard. And it's not a perfect world, but we're certainly going to repair the roads. The other thing is, in fact, I is interested in the member that from near me is the member from Timberley Prospect. And I know that many people, I'm not so much sure it was him, but some other people of opposition have said, oh, well, if I was on that side of the house, you would have this and this and this and this paved. Well, he got more pavement in my part of he got more pavement in his riding than I did last year. And I think it's basically people on this side, we realize we have many roads to repair. But of course, it's where the road is at the worst and it's used by the most. And that's the criteria. It isn't because you sit on this side of the house or that side of the house, whatever. It's just where the need is most, that's where the repair gets first made. And it's certainly, we're going in that direction. And I think that's what all Nova Scotians are very sort of aware of that. I mean, the majority of people are, you fix the worst first, and that's what we're going in that direction. And certainly, I know if I could take just a moment, in my riding of Chester St. Margaret's, the paving, I know there was going to be some down on 333, that's the route 333, and it's going to be between Indian Point Road and Raymond Road. Also, there's some pavement to be replaced, as it should be, as was just mentioned, in Sim Settlement. And they're repairing, just taking the road up and replacing it because it's dangerous at this present condition, as we all know of dangerous roads. And of course, the other one too, in Chester St. Margaret's, they've just, tender has been put in the paper to repair trunk 12 from the exit from the 103 up to Chester Grant Road. And certainly it's, we have to, I appreciate that. I could go on for hours about roads because the main thing is we're going in the right direction and it's being done fairly. And I think all Nova Scotians appreciate that. We can't do it all at once, but you have to do it fairly, not just because you're on this side of the house or that side of the house and all that stuff. It's very angry when people are saying that to get that. In fact, sometimes I see some of the opposition saying, oh, well, it used to be this way, it used to be that way, oh, we could do this. That's not the way to do it. Because when we took the roads, when we became the government, that is, the roads were about, by the way, in early 1990s, 10% of the provincial budget went to Department of Transportation, Public Works. When we took the power in 1999, it was 3%. So the roads are costing more, so less and less we're done. Now we have to do as fair as we can. We're going in the right direction. And I realize, Mr. Speaker, I don't have a great length of time any more than that. But basically, the other thing is, too, I think we all appreciate that we have to, everybody, I think, wants to have the economy of Nova Scotia busy. And basically, the business of Nova Scotia is small businesses are about 70% of all businesses in Nova Scotia employ between 1 to 5 people. And basically, they are spread all over Nova Scotia. And indeed, it is very, very important that they have accessible things to get their product to work. And is also to keep workers all over Nova Scotia. They don't have to feel that they're ruining their cars, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, thank you very much, and I very much appreciate this opportunity.
Order.
Thank you.
I recognize the member from Timberley Prospect.
Well, roads, deplorable conditions. You know, I could break into a few choruses of Hank Snow, I've been everywhere. Because let me tell you, we can take a tour of roads all across this province, and they are in rotten shape. But more importantly, Mr. Speaker, there's no plan in place. There's no strategic plan in place, a public plan that lists the criteria correctly and publicly so that people can say they know when their road will receive the proper attention that is due. And I can use the member from Chester St. Margaret's most pressing example. The most highly publicized, promoted tourist destination in this province is Peggy's Cove. And I can tell you from the Indian Point Road to Indian Harbor, unless you've got a donkey and a cart, you're going to have one terrible time getting there this summer. A highly promoted tourist destination, that road is in embarrassing shape. What's the plan? What's the strategy? When can that road be expected to be worked upon? Now, all across Nova Scotia, Nova Scotians are expecting the pavement trucks to hit the highway. Because after all, pavement politics is alive and well in this province. And why is it alive and well? Because of the secretive approach of this previous crowd here and that government there. They will not make it clear what the criteria is when it comes to deciding priority projects for road improvements. So, for example, if we knew the impact on the economic development of a particular area of a certain road, if we knew the time since the road had last had a major job done on it, the way of an upkeep, we're also looking at a major upgrading, when we look at the tonnage of the vehicles that regularly use that road, or more importantly, a statistic which is of important consequence, the number of fatal or non-fatal accidents that take place on these roads, we have to be aware of the fact that we have a need in this province that has to be met. Now, I hear members opposite, I hear the members of the third party go on about the plans and what they're going to do. Nova Scotians are frustrated because of how the work has been done. We wait for these tenders to be called, we may wait for these announcements to be made, and then for what reasons are they made? I heard the member from Chester St. Margaret's make reference to the fact that the people in Timberley Prospect received paving. And they did because of the activists involved. The activists involved in the PROS group, the Please Respect Our Safety group, which is the group on the Prospect Road. Those people lobbied that government at the time. They lobbied that government because the decision had to be made. And to the credit of the previous member from Shelburne, Mr. Huskelson came into our community and met with the community, listened to the community, the case was made, and this recent government has followed up and had that amount of paving done. But I wanted to make clear of something, the fact that although my constituency is in the riding of Timberley Prospect, is in the HRM, this government on the opposite side is determined to pit rural Nova Scotia against urban Nova Scotia. The member from Queens in particular, on numerous occasions in debates like this, should stand in his place and explain to us the Rural Impact Mitigation Fund and how it's used. But instead, you read the headline in the Liverpool Advance, NDP accusing roads not being worked on in Queens County. If the member from Queens has not stood in his place, and I challenge him now, stand and have your say on this important issue, because I want you to know that my constituency is largely rural. And I can tell you, outside of the urban sprawl, we do have a number of roads that are in deplorable condition, unsafe conditions. We cannot attract tourists to those areas. The fish plant in various areas can't even get their trucks up and down. We have vehicle restrictions in some areas, particularly along the coastal communities. The roads in rural Nova Scotia are in terrible shape. They have been neglected. They were neglected by that crowd, and because of budget limitations, and we can't do it all at once, they are very slowly being worked on by that government. But we need a plan. The plan has to be clear. The timelines have to be made public so that people know that a particular stretch of road will be worked on, will be looked at within a time frame that is made public. That's what's needed, Mr. Speaker. That's, after all, the number one priority when we have trust restored to us as MLAs, to us as public officials. When we go out on the election campaign trail, hopefully any day here, we can say, look, I'm in opposition, but if the case is made for why a particular road should be worked on, improved, and paved, the case will be made, so that we don't hear or see in the paper, more importantly, these announcements that a certain portion of road is being worked on. And of course they say, well, if it's within the Halifax Regional Municipality, it's all treated so differently. It's all treated so differently as if it's in rural Nova Scotia. Yes, we belong to the Capital District, but let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, and you know well from your area, that outside of the core area of amalgamation, created by these Liberals, amalgamation, the disaster that it's been when it comes to equity of services. Let me tell you, when it comes to roads outside of the urban core, they are in deplorable condition. And for a change, I will agree with the member from Cape Breton South. This is a resolution that I certainly can support. Now, we're looking at the fact that over the next 10 years, there could be as much as $3.5 billion to bring roads up to spec in this province. What is the effect of this going to be? You know, one of the first things that I did this fall when we came into, this spring when we came into the legislature, is I tabled a petition. The petition was from tourists who had been going to the Camp Neptune campground in Indian Harbor. Person after person who signed that petition said they would not be back to Nova Scotia. And I know the Minister of Health Promotion and Tourism is concerned about that. When you drop in to the Amherst Tourist Bureau, when you drop in to some of the other exit points across this province, and they will make the glowing comments about the generosity of Nova Scotians, they will talk about the wonderful scenery, they will talk about how well they were received in this community, or that community, and then, Mr. Speaker, they will say, the roads are absolutely awful. Because, as the Minister of Tourism knows, tourists come to this province to attend those various events that are throughout the province. They want to see the rural museums. They want to go to the coastal communities. They want to visit parts of Cape Breton. And I know that Dorian Estevitz, the minister, and I shared this comment, and in no way was it meant, and he knows it too, it was not meant as any kind of comment. They want to get off the beaten track. But we have the Minister of Environment and Labor bringing forth the volunteer planning group to look at off-road vehicles, and I will tell you, it will be very difficult to justify to the people in Terrence Bay why they can't use the roads in Lower Prospect, why they can't use the roads at Porcupine Hill, because the roads are so bad, the only way you can use them is by using your all-terrain vehicle. They are in very hard shape, very deplorable shape. So a community that's attempting to promote itself, a community that's attempting to economically get back on its feet, one of the key factors in this province is the method of transportation. Now, we can look at other areas of the province, and I know the member from Colchester North wasn't particularly pleased with the fact that I brought up a constituency issue in this House today. But the issue is there. The issue comes out time and time and time again that there has to be a strategy, the plan should be made public, the priority list should be made open so that people know what it is, and the criteria for these road improvements must be made in such a fashion that Nova Scotians have trust and they have faith in the decisions that are being made. I want for the member opposite, particularly the member from Chester St. Margaret's, to table this March 27th, 1999 column from the Saturday Chronicle Herald. Make road repair criteria transparent. And it is written by the MLA for Timberley Prospect. I would see that that would be something that the member from Chester St. Margaret's perhaps could use as he knocks on the doors as we go down the Peggy's Cove Road. I heard that member stand in his place today. I must admit I was waiting to hear of the destination of Peggy's Cove. I was waiting to hear the destination of the Swiss Air Memorial, and I didn't hear those words. That concerns me. Sitting in government, that particular stretch of road, and I can say from the need of improvements, it's not in my constituency of Timberley Prospect. It's an obvious need. It must be addressed. The Minister of Transportation knows it. He's been told so by myself. I hope he's been told so by the member from Chester St. Margaret's. I hope the Minister of Tourism has impressed upon him that this is, after all, a road that needs immediate improvement, and residents only fairly should be treated in that fashion.
Order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The time for debate on adjournment debate is ended. When we adjourned a half hour ago, the member from Dartmouth North was speaking. He has 38 minutes left.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I think that when, before the moment of interruption, and where I left off, I was talking about the RRSS facilities and the role and responsibility of the Minister of Community Services. I want to say that the family members have obviously had conversation with members on the government side, and some of those members on the government side have obviously given them conflicting or different information with respect to how best to address this. I do know that the Honourable Minister, the member representing the Halifax Citadel constituency, does have a small options home within her facility, one that's operated by the RRSS, and I do know that the member for Halifax Bedford Basin is also has one of those facilities. And I do know that they probably have been in conversation as being members of the government side with respect to how best to address this particular issue. Some of the information may have been, and I'm not privy to the information that they may have had in conversation with, particularly the family members of persons with intellectual disabilities. But I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, that they probably did have those conversations along with others, and that they can certainly direct the Minister of Community Services to address this issue in an appropriate way. And I know that we're dealing with this Bill 36 before us, and it's a 6 months hence. But we could look at that item, and that item could be one of the items on the top of the agenda with respect to dealing with this, and that if in fact we are going to make sure that all our society benefits from this balanced budget and the surplus in revenue, then the most vulnerable people in our society could very well benefit from that as well. And that in fact those people, those members, I should say, Mr. Speaker, can certainly impress upon the ministers within the portfolios that have the authority to do something about it. And I say the Minister of Finance, who can divvy up the additional dollars, the Minister of the Environment and Labour, who can talk about binding arbitration or at least getting them back to the table, and most importantly, the Minister of Community Services, who does have the power to ask the board, the volunteer board, who do such a tremendous job to get back to the negotiating table and negotiate the agreement and a settlement. Because after all, Mr. Speaker, the kind of services that these individuals provide is absolutely significant. And I can tell you the family members are particularly proud, and I do know that the former Minister of Community Services demonstrated flexibility when in fact the issue before the transition homes came before this legislature. The minister certainly demonstrated that his government was going by the Blue Book and the process that we listen and we act and we understand the concerns of Nova Scotians out there. And he certainly understood the concerns of Nova Scotians out there with respect to making sure that the transition homes were continued to be funded for that year of 2002-2003. Also, this can very well happen with respect to the RSS, the board of directors, and the local 66 councillors out there. Simply because there's some 250 members, and there's 36 other agencies or organizations out there that will require funding, doesn't mean that that's where you stop. That's the basis of where you start. And the minister uses the old analogy that, Mr. Speaker, that they have balanced and they have brought wage parity across the province as a result of the service exchange. But what the minister doesn't tell Nova Scotians is that was part of the service exchange. That was an agreement by the municipalities in the province to take over people's services. And people's services were community services. And many of those people were in fact funded by the municipal government. There are many members of municipal government who are very much aware of how much of a bite that took on the municipal government's tax dollars. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, this is today. It's over and done. There has been no collective agreement for at least 2 years. These individuals work diligently on behalf of the most vulnerable Nova Scotians, those with intellectual disabilities, and they do the kind of job that you or I or no one else would be prepared to do. And Mr. Speaker, 6 months from now, we could certainly look at their role and responsibility. I also want to go back, Mr. Speaker, because the $155 tax rebate is something that just strikes out at me. It reflects, and I can see that big check and that's going to be coming in the mailboxes of many Nova Scotians, the 464,000 Nova Scotians that will receive that check. But also, Mr. Speaker, I know that there are some 300,000 Nova Scotians who live in all those ridings and those 52 constituencies, not only on this side of the floor, but on the government side of the floor as well. There will be some 300,000 Nova Scotians who will not pull a check out of the mailbox. They will not get the benefit of a luxury summer. They will not get the benefit of taking those dollars and spending them on items that they would so dearly need or want. This will be an opportunity, or this could be 6 months down the road, allow the government to rethink that all Nova Scotians benefit in the spoils of a balanced budget, not simply because of their inability to pay. Many Nova Scotians are disabled Nova Scotians, Mr. Speaker, and there have been requests for this government that if Nova Scotians all are going to benefit from the spoils of a balanced budget, then so should the disabled persons. And I do know that there was a pilot project some 10 years ago with respect to persons living with disabilities living independently. It was called independent living. That pilot project is still on, but there has been a request for the government to entertain other pilot projects of similar nature that would allow disabled persons to have this independence, this ability to be a part of the community, to be able to flow and go to events and to do their shopping and be as independent as they possibly can, even independent to the point whereby they could live in what they consider their own home environment. The minister could have very well had done that, Mr. Speaker, if the minister would have looked at, the Minister of Finance, would I say that, would have looked at how best he could utilize those surplus dollars. I know that the Blue Book said that there was a plan, and the plan after year 4 that there would be a 10% tax cut. Mr. Speaker, I've held up the government's Blue Book. I have held it up in this legislative assembly until my arm got tired, until I finished counting the number of times that the government has not lived up to its commitment of some 247 promises in that Blue Book. Not all the promises, and the government will agree, have been fulfilled, and some haphazardly. I also, Mr. Speaker, was fortunate enough to have the Tory Blue Book signatured by every member of the Tory Party, the Tory caucus, I should say. That signature blue book is there, and I will certainly keep that signature blue book in my possession for some time to come. Maybe someday, Mr. Speaker, I might use it as a fundraising venture when some of those names will no longer be in the legislature, and it will become a historical document. It will certainly become an historical document and something that might generate a great deal of revenue on the auction block. But, Mr. Speaker, having said that, I have to tell you that there are many. There was another promise in that in fact the government could have lived up to. There was a request, and that was a request by the Disabled Persons Commission of Nova Scotia. It was also a request by LEO, which is the League of Equal Opportunities of Nova Scotia as well, and that was for a pilot project on technical aids. The former Minister of Health, and I know the present Minister of Health, will acknowledge the importance of having access to technical aids, particularly if we find that individuals are trapped into hospitals, to use an appropriate word, trapped into the hospitals because they don't have the technical aids that will allow them to vacate the institution or the hospital setting, or even a home environment at an appropriate time. Mr. Speaker, a technical aids project, pilot project, operated by disabled persons could very well save this government hundreds of thousands of dollars. Not only would it save the government hundreds of thousands of dollars, Mr. Speaker, but it would also give opportunities for persons with disabilities to be employed, persons who are knowledgeable about the kind of apparatuses that might be needed, like a pair of crutches, like quad canes, like, for example, wheelchairs, Mr. Speaker, which many, because this government does not fund wheelchairs and so on unless it's for a special circumstance. Most often, many people are there to fund their own wheelchairs, wouldn't have to go to the Lions Club and to the Rotary Club and to the Kinsmen's and all those other organizations to further embarrass themselves by seeking funding to be able to purchase something that allows them to be as mobile as you or I. And it's all about mobility, as a matter of fact, and it puts them in an embarrassing situation of having to seek these technical aids and to having to go out to organizations in the community to seek assistance in purchasing these technical aids. The government could have very well thought about, when it was giving a 10% tax cut, of how it was going to divvy the spoils out to all Nova Scotians and not only to 464,000 Nova Scotians by a $155 check. The government could have said that, look, we will continue to do that. It may cost us a bit more, but all Nova Scotians are going to benefit in the spoils of a balanced budget. And Mr. Speaker, the government side have many individuals whom I believe could demonstrate the compassion and have the opportunity to reflect and change within the government. I'm sure the honourable member from Kings North, who is a member of the clergy by profession, could very well talk about the social justices. He's been around the world. He's seen some social inequities in other countries, and he certainly understands that, you know, if social justice is to be here, that everyone is to benefit. And if he is a professor of ethics and he teaches ethics, then surely, Mr. Speaker, he would understand that he has the opportunity to impress upon his government the importance of through ethics, the importance of equity and fairness. There's absolutely no question about that, Mr. Speaker. We talk about religion and government not mixing, but yet we have members of the clergy who have from time to time been elected to this legislative assembly. They have an important role to play, and I would not deny them the opportunity to play an important role in the legislative assembly, because they do, but they also have input with respect to that. And with a 6 month choice, Mr. Speaker, we could go out there and we could talk about social issues. And we could talk about social issues across this province. We could talk to those social agencies. We could talk to members of the parishes and of the church. If we believe that we are truly the Christians that we are, and we go to church to simply use it as an exercise, if we are the true Christians that we are, then we would look at social justice and how everyone is going to benefit from the benefit of these dollars. And so when we turn around and we have a government that provides a balanced budget, and not only provides a balanced budget, Mr. Speaker, but it has a surplus to the point whereas in year 4 it says that it will give a $155 check to 464,000 Nova Scotians, but 300,000 Nova Scotians will be left out. Mr. Speaker, the most poorest of Nova Scotians will be left out. And those Nova Scotians are the one who is likely to make this economy flow. And that money's going to spend back into the small businesses. And if this government believes in small business, then this government ought to make sure that those individuals who are going to spend the money in Nova Scotia have the opportunity to get it by way of tax rebate and spend it, so that those small businesses will flow. The money then in turn will reach the cycle it always has and gets back into the government purse. Mr. Speaker, there's also another issue that the Financial Measures Act hasn't addressed, but certainly we have the opportunity, because of the omnibus nature of this bill, that there are many different parts of the bill. Also, that this bill hinges on every one of those government departments that we have the opportunity to, we could have had the opportunity to address the issue of housing. Now, I know that the Minister of Housing Services entertained with the federal government to be supportive of an affordable housing program. As a matter of fact, that was on September, I believe, it might have been even September the 13th of 2002. I believe that agreement was signed out at the Halifax International Airport Hotel, and that this government was going to be committed to developing, housing projects over the 5-year period of which this money was allocated for. The government up-fronted $11 million of the federal government's dollars. The federal government decided to get back into housing, and I don't know if the members of the Liberal side have seen that, but surely I'm sure the federal Liberals have seen that up-fronted the $11 million right up front, rather than use the taxpayers' dollars of Nova Scotia, which the government was committed to do, to balance that off into the housing projects. Mr. Speaker, I will tell you that there was a report, Housing for Tomorrow, Social Housing, Affordable Housing, and there was also that report was done in 1998. There was a report done in 1997, and that was under the previous Liberal government. The Conservative government came to power. They had the opportunity to address the most important issue that we are faced with now, is housing and the extreme shortage of housing. This government has not built one single housing development other than the 15-unit housing project in Middleton. And I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, that we won't have to wait 6 months hence to deal with that, because that announcement will come when the election is on, and I'll bet you that that'll be a ribbon-cutting ceremony during the election, process. During the election campaign, excuse me, Mr. Speaker is most appropriate. And I can assure you that that's what will happen. There was one other tiny gesture that was made by this provincial government within housing in the last, both previous government and the previous government in the last 10 years, and that was with respect to the Gary Street housing project that's on the corner of Gottingen and Garish. And as a matter of fact, the Halifax Regional Municipality donated the land, Mr. Speaker, for that to go. 6 months from now, we can go out there and we can talk to the advocacy groups on housing and what type of housing needs to be built in Nova Scotia that will meet the needs and the present needs that the requests are out there for. Seniors housing is significantly important, Mr. Speaker. It has been requested. Seniors are quite concerned that seniors housing has actually moved away from seniors housing, and people who are no longer seniors are moving in to seniors housing projects. And that was never the design for those seniors housing projects. Actually, they were designed for people 65 years of age and older to be able to live in an environment where they were comfortable. Some of them no longer live in seniors' housing that they feel comfortable in, and there needs to be a rethinking of just exactly what seniors' housing is and what it should be. There are many seniors' housing that need elevators. In 5 years, they've never had elevator services in those seniors' housing. As a matter of fact, I do know that in Cole Harbour, Circassian Drive, as a matter of fact, there's a seniors complex that has made a request for an elevator on several occasions to the Minister of Housing Services. Never to be. It did not happen, and I don't think it's in the books, Mr. Speaker, now. The Financial Measures Act, and if this were to go out, we would certainly have the opportunity to look at that and to make sure that that was one of the priority items. There are a number of seniors housing that just simply don't meet the needs of today's seniors. There needs to be a rethinking of redesigning, and the people who should be involved in that are advocacy groups and seniors who best know the kind of environment that they want to live in the future. I do know that the honourable member from Dartmouth South has many senior centres, seniors facilities built in his riding of Dartmouth South, and the new riding to be Dartmouth South Portland Valley, and much of that had been done by the former Minister of Community Services, Rolly Thornhill, at the time, and he developed many of those seniors housing. There's been a need for a spread out through Dartmouth as the communities change for the seniors housing to be more appropriate located into communities. That's never been looked at. It needs to be looked at. Mr. Speaker, there are some 1,300 people on a waiting list in the Halifax area. Vacancy rates in the Halifax area are some 2.7%, which puts a tremendous stress on those individuals whom, in fact, are seeking housing. And housing, Mr. Speaker, is a right. It's a right to shelter under the United Nations Agreement, I do believe, Mr. Speaker. I can't very well confirm that, but I believe that that's one of the social fundamental rights under the United Nations, that everyone be afforded at least a shelter. There are many individuals who, because of the high costs in the metro area and people migrating to the Halifax area simply because of maybe the economy spinning down in Cape Breton, or maybe because of there are greater employment opportunities in the metro area. There's a number of reasons why people migrate to a capital of a province. And many of those are in opportunities of seeking a better way of life, a better employment opportunity. And as a result of that, there's a lot of pressures that are placed upon the housing stock in those municipalities where there's a need. And it's not only a need, particularly in Halifax, but if you look at where the growth is taking place, there's a need in Guysborough for housing, there's a need in Antigonish, there's a need in the Halifax metro area. Of course, we all know that because there's a waiting list of some 1,300 people, but there's also a need in Kentville, and also needs in the south shore of Nova Scotia through Yarmouth and Digby area. So there's a tremendous need for social housing, Mr. Speaker, and it has not been addressed. It has not been addressed by this government, and it has not been addressed by the previous government. 6 months from now, Mr. Speaker, we can go out and we can possibly ask the citizens of Nova Scotia, the advocacy groups who are keenly interested in making sure that housing is a number one issue on the government's agenda. We could certainly go out and ask them how they believe the government should move, or what direction the government should move with respect to social housing. When we look at this, Mr. Speaker, we also know that there's another special group that's not even taken into consideration as of yet, and we do know that in other parts of the country they have been, and those are individuals with environmental illness. We do know that there's a project in Ottawa that, in fact, a 15-unit building that deals primarily with those individuals who have environmental illness. And there are varying degrees of environmental illness, so it's extremely difficult to meet all the needs. But they have sat down with the group and decided on a pilot project of a 15-unit building whereby this can be done. The government of Nova Scotia has not indicated in any way that, in fact, it's about to address the issue of environmental illness and housing. And I do know that we have had one particular individual, Mr. Speaker, over time who has actually lived in an automobile because they could no longer live in the apartment units, living in certain parts of this municipality and in parklands in that automobile, rather than having a shelter. And I think that that's what this bill can do, this Financial Measures Act can do. It can say to the Minister of Housing, that it's important to rethink your budget. And if in fact you're going to rethink your budget, that $37.26 million that you have agreed to be a partner with the federal government of Canada, you need to think about the housing stock. We don't know how much money is going to go into rental supplements. We do know that there's another separate bag of money there that was handed down for residential rehabilitation assistance, the RRAP, or the RAP program. And we do know that many people in our constituencies have taken advantage of the RAP program. And we do know that there will probably be many people take advantage of the RAP program in the future. But we need to know, Mr. Speaker, that there's money there. Often the rent supplement, the RAP program, the money runs out before the money runs out before it actually comes in, because there's so many requests for emergencies and so many requests for those dollars. So, Mr. Speaker, I have to tell you that that we can certainly look at that as a financial measures item, and we can certainly ask in 6 months' time. We can certainly look around and we can certainly ask the Minister of Housing Services to go back and to review his budget and to see where those money's going to come from. I know that there will be a flurry of announcements during this election year, and on the campaign trail there will be a flurry of announcements. You can be rest assured on housing projects that are going to come out from this government's purse. And I can tell you that there will be announcements probably to rural communities, and rightly so. Many people, 78% I think, of Nova Scotians in rural communities own their own homes, and they need to have those homes maintained and up to standards and so on, and rightly so there will be money put into that. But I believe in the agreement that was signed, that the federal government with the provinces said that there needs to be some new housing stock established. And there needs to be some 1,500 new housing stock, maybe possibly established here in the province of Nova Scotia. I don't know, Mr. Speaker, I'm not the expert in the field, but I can tell you there are many people out there who are experts in the field, and there's the advocacy group on homelessness. There's a number of other groups which just slipped my tongue at the present time, Mr. Speaker, but I can assure you that they're very competent. They have individuals whom in fact have participated in roundtables on housing. They have participated in what are the requirements out there, what are the needs for the 21st century into housing. There's a whole lot of things that they know about, and I'm sure that they've had contact with the government on, and it's about time the government moved on that. Mr. Speaker, I know my time is coming to a close, and I want to touch on an issue that I haven't touched on for a moment, and I don't think that I will give it the appropriate time that it needs, but I'm certainly going to try to capsulize it, Mr. Speaker, and that's the issue with respect to the casino and the legislation where, in fact, the government has introduced legislation given a 30-day notification. The government says it's an amendment to the Municipal Government Act. Well, the Municipal Government Act was approved in this legislature in 1998, Mr. Speaker, and I happened to be here. And in the Municipal Government Act, the government of the day and the present government knew that the Municipal Government Act was designed for the order of good government. And it was designed to allow municipalities to have autonomy. and drafting bylaws, Mr. Speaker, and in drafting bylaws that the municipality felt that it could appropriately deal with, and that those bylaws could appropriately stand the test of time in the courts. Because the municipalities prior to 1998, Mr. Speaker, could not draft a bylaw or even entertain or consider legislation that would be contrary or would affect the legislation of the province of Nova Scotia, the government of Nova Scotia. So when the new Municipal Act came in 1998, Mr. Speaker, I was certainly one of those who applauded it simply because it did give municipal government for once the opportunity to be another level of government. Although not recognized under the charter and not recognized by the province, it still gave the municipal government the opportunity, the 55 remaining municipal governments in this province, the opportunity to have what they considered to be an order of good government. And that was a government whereby they could introduce bylaws that they felt the citizens of their municipality wanted. In the city of Halifax most recently introduced a very controversial piece of bylaw, and that bylaw was a total ban on smoking. A total smoking ban bylaw affected one of the major the major revenue drivers for the province of Nova Scotia, that being the casino. And when the provincial government recognized that now the municipal governments had the power to draft its bylaws, quickly came to the legislature with another bill saying that they're going to rescind this municipal bylaw by bringing in their own piece of legislation that will allow them the 30 days opportunity in the event that they are dramatically affected the profits or the revenue from the casino. Mr. Speaker, I want to say to you that in fact it was irresponsible of this government because most importantly the Minister of Health is very much aware of the effects of tobacco and tobacco smoking in this province. Not only in this province, we have health experts across the country and many provinces who are going for total ban on smoking in public places and in the workplace. And Mr. Speaker, the day has come when we have to recognize that if we're going to reduce the cost of health budgets, then we have to recognize that one way to reduce the cost of health budgets is the cessation of smoking, which has a significant impact on the health budget because of the kind of problems that it creates and the kind of diseases that smoking creates. And if you really want to see the effects of smoking, Mr. Speaker, all you have to do is visit a palliative care unit in any hospital in this province, and you will see the side effects of smoking, the kind of when you see someone on their death legs trying to struggle from one unit to another, then you recognize the importance of the cessation of smoking. And I think that when a government turns around and looks at dollar values rather than human values, there needs to be something said about a level of government that thinks in that particular way. Mr. Speaker, like I said, I don't think that I could provide the kind of time that's really needed to simply debate this one issue alone, because it's such a significantly important issue. But Mr. Speaker, at this moment, I would like to take the opportunity to make a motion, and I move the adjournment of this debate.
There's a motion to adjourn debate, and I hear two members requesting recorded vote. So I guess at this point, unless there's unanimous consent to do otherwise, we will proceed with the recorded vote. Ring the bells. Ring the bells. No. Okay. Order. Order. Okay. So maybe we can talk about what we did last night, which is unanimous consent to waive the ringing of the bells on the assumption that there's unanimous consent to proceed directly to a motion to adjourn the House. Okay. Is that agreed? Okay. So the motion to adjourn debate, is it agreed? Thank you. I recognize the Government House Leader.
Speaker, I move the House to now rise to meet again on the morrow at the hour of 2 p.m. The House will sit from 2 to 6, and the order of business will be the opposition members' business, and we'll wait the directions.
Member from Halifax Fairview to give order the business opposition day tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Government House Leader has given tomorrow's hours, and the business for tomorrow is resolution number 17 and resolution number 906. And if the other members would like a copy of that, I have a copy of those resolutions here. Move that the House adjourn.
Thank you. There's a motion to adjourn the House until 2 p.m. tomorrow, opposition day. Is it agreed? Agreed. Thank you. House is adjourned.